Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to complete the Glottkin. More specifically, I'm going to be painting up Ghurk. So, let's get started. Now, one of the first big things you'll notice is that there are these giant model gaps in the plastic, so we're going to fill that up. Now with some Liquitex modeling putty, I'm going to take this and apply this to all the cracks, and once I apply it in, I'm going to take a little bit of a moist brush and I'm going to brush back and forth to remove the excess. And then I'm going to use a hair dryer to speed up the drying process. Now, in the end, Liquitex is not that good for filling in the gaps. I mean, if there's a little hole or crack in, it's going to fill in, but it just doesn't do the job here, so I should have used green putty instead. It would have been better, but just FYI. I then prep the model for priming. He's a big boy, and the tape can't fully hold him on, so I have to be careful not to accidentally knock him off by accident. Going back to the Liquitex, I'm going to use it for what it's best at. I'm going to cover his base in this. Now, I'm just going to apply a lot of this on it. And it's going to take a while. And once I've successfully applied it all and make sure it's not on the ring, I'm then going to rapidly dry it with the hair dryer. Now, because of how thick this is and with the hair dryer, so basically all the hair dryer is going to do is it's going to dry the very top. It's still going to be soft, and if I press in too hard, it's going to rip into the soft underside. It's going to take 24 hours or so for this to fully soften. So after drying it down, I'm going to then pat all over it, like pat down with my finger to get rid of all the huge brush strokes and stuff like that. Yeah, just to smooth it out a little bit. I then try to texture it a little bit with this brush. It's a very stiff brush with bristles, and I tap, 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 tap on it repeatedly after doing a few more dry runs with the dryer to harden it more. And once it's, well, dry enough, it's still soft, but the top is still dry, I'm going to carefully, accurately press down the Glottkin further down. Now, ideally, you want to press it down and leave it there overnight for it to completely dry and everything. I, however, was kind of in a rush to, get on to painting, and when I removed it, it was still very soft and some of it came up, so I had to do several layers of press it in, remove it, use the hair dryer to dry it, then put it back in, and just to make sure that the spots would fit well and just didn't look bad. Alright everyone, now to painting. With Warpstone Glow, Beeltan Green, Karak Stone, Agrax Earthshade, and Contrast Magos Purple, we're going to paint the skin. Now I'm going to start off with Warpstone Glow, and I'm going to use an airbrush and just apply it all over. However, spoiler from the future and stuff, this is actually a bad idea. What you want to do is you want to paint the horns first, and then tape up the horns first, because that's going to cause a lot of trouble later. So just FYI, if you're trying to copy me, do the horns first, not the skin. And now we're going to apply Beeltan Green, the wash Beeltan Green all over the green skin. And now, with that step completed, we can take a good look and we can see a lot of the shadow and detail of this model. This is a good, base patina appearance. Alright, it looks good. This is a good starting point. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Warplock Green, or Warplock Glow, and we're going to dry brush all over the model. So looking at this, it is a little bit brighter. The recesses are dark and very visible in contrast, but it's not that much of a difference. The dry brush will actually help, yeah. You will see very small tiny details because his skin has little pocket marks. I don't know how to, like little holes in the skin that are just barely visible. They're very subtle, but you can only really see them if you dry brush. But that's not good enough, so what we're going to do is we're going to go with Karak Stone, and we're going to dry brush all over the model, Karak Stone. Now the big dry brush was kind of good, but it couldn't get into all the areas, just because the giant dry brush I had wasn't that good, I guess, for something like this. So I went back with a smaller dry brush. Now, This Karak Stone dry brush on really does look like a fleshy color, since all the Rotbringers have like light white, like leprous looking skin. I thought that to keep some of that white-ish skin color into the model. Alright, it's looking okay. It looks kind of good. We're trying to create like the background. What the skin and flesh color is ultimately the background for a bunch of other things. But this, I'm going to have to interject and change a few things. I'm going to go with some Xandri dust mixed with Lamian medium, and we're going to airbrush. So with a, not really a one-to-one mix, more like 1 part Xandri dust and like 10 parts Lamian medium. We just want it to be Lamian medium colored water, basically. Or no, Xandri dust colored water, and we're going to spray this into the giant open areas and from angles. Now, interestingly enough, when the paint is this like thinned down in pigment, it's not mixed with water, so it's not runny, you can actually see the highlights of the dry brush underneath this. So it has a really clear effect, and you can actually see all the small details and stuff. So this airbrushing with this mix, I'm able to see all the details underneath, a lot of these pocket marks and small things, and still good coloration throughout it. This is looking really nice. This very thinned out airbrush paint. Yeah, when the Xandri dust is thinned out this well, you can even see the little tiny pocket marks. Like even when sprayed at an angle, like the paint didn't go in and remove all the detail from the dry brushing. And the color looks much better. It looks more full, more lively, so that was very good. Okay, I'm going to memorize that one for later. Lamian medium with just a dash of whatever other paint is really good to combine with dry brushing. And now on to darken it. With pure Agrax Earthshade, we're going to spray at the undersides, the shadows, like places where the flesh is going to be overlapping a bit. We want to add some color, and so the Agrax Earthshade will add a strong brown on it. Now what you want to do is you want to spray for a little bit, then let air go through to dry it. Spray, dry, spray, dry. You don't want it to pool at all. We just want like subtle tone color changes to happen. Now I'm taking a few cues from the box art, and there are certain places like his feet which are a dark green, so I go back with Bealtan green and the wash, or the shade, whichever, I don't know. Games Workshop has a bunch of technical names for their paints. So I'm going to use the Bealtan green wash shade thing. I'm going to spray it onto its legs to darken his ankles, calves, cankles, that's it, his cankles. Also based off the box art, the top part of him where his brothers stand is also darker flesh. And now with Magos Purple in the airbrush, we're going to spray this, well, we're going to discolor the areas purple, like essentially bruising. We're going to start off with the box as a guide, but I'm going to spray his stomach, his left arm, I think I overdid it a little bit on the arm, and his right arm. Yeah, the lamprey maw thing. Yeah. Now, I do realize that the Magos Purple wasn't strong enough, and maybe I could go back with a little bit of Druchii Violet, which is a shade or wash I had that's a darker purple, and spray it on certain areas of the purple to make it appear even darker for a dark purple. But Magos Purple it is, and that's all I use for this. And then with a brush, I'm going to go back with Magos Purple and apply it to these little tentacle bits that hang around here and there. After staring at the model for a long period of time, I decided to go back with more Magos Purple and apply it to, how do I put it, parts where it looks like the skin is fused together. Places where skin folds over and is bruised, stuff like that, adding more color throughout the entire model. I then go back once again with Agrax Earthshade and apply it to the undersides of a lot of the folds, all over his flesh, other places that I want darkened, also the open sores on his flesh where the skin is ripped open, that as well. Ultimately, just have fun with it at this point. His skin is a painting, and adding a lot of flair and details and just coloration everywhere, just go crazy. Not too much with the excess coloring of purple, brown, and stuff like that. Less is more. I did a little too much on the arm, but oh well. So just have fun with it and add color where you like. And now with Xerxes purple and Genestealer purple, we're going to paint all the veins, the big ones, the small ones, and his intestines spilling out on him. We're going to start off with a basic layer of Xerxes purple on all the veins. There's stuff on the inside of his arm, some on his legs, his intestines are on his stomach, and there's some on his back and shoulders of this vein stuff. And now with Genestealer purple, which is really kind of a pink, I then applied this as a highlight covering 80 to 90% of the entirety of all the veins, all throughout his legs, the intestines sticking out of his gut, and the intestines sticking out of his feet. I don't know. As well as I eventually dry brushed, I forgot to mention this, I painted the, what was it, tongue? Arm, the thing that comes out of his right arm with Xerxes purple, and in the end I'm going to dry brush that with Genestealer purple all over. Now with Cadian Fleshtone, Bestigor Flesh, and Fugan Orange, we're going to paint a match of scar tissue and boils. So with the Cadian Fleshtone, we're going to take this, and there's a bunch of, like, I don't know how to put it, ritual carvings on him. His skin looks cut open, and we're going to apply Cadian Fleshtone directly into each of these carvings. There's stuff on the top of his body, there's stuff on his arm, and I think a few other places. And then with the Bestigor Flesh, we're going to go and we're going to cover not every, I mean, it's a decision you're going to have to make, but there's a bunch of boils everywhere, and there's some places that look like little bumps. Do what you like on this, but for most of it, we're going to fill in all those boils, and we're going to fill in like these open parts where the skin is missing. We're going to fill in that like a fat deposit underneath. That's what we're going for. So with Bestigor Flesh, probably going to paint 90% of the boils that are all spread out with Bestigor Flesh, and the open sores with Bestigor Flesh. This step will take a while. And then with Fugan Orange, we're going to apply this all over every single boil, and we're going to not fully but partially fill in every single open sore fat deposit, essentially. I forgot to mention, but we're also going to apply Fugan Orange directly into all the scar tissue in the Cadian Fleshtone, including the ritual scarring and the cuts. And then once that is done drying, we're going to take our Cadian Fleshtone and apply it again on the raised scar tissue, the circle and these other circles on his chest and stuff. And then with Bestigor Flesh, we cover like 90% of each of the boils with Bestigor Flesh, and we do like maybe 40%, 40 to 50% of each of the open like fat deposits and stuff with this again. And now with Karak Stone and Skeleton Horde Contrast, we're going to paint the skulls that are embedded into his flesh. Throughout his body has a bunch of skulls on the back that are embedded. Now there's two different sets of skulls, and there's some in the horns, but we're going to paint those a different color because I want them to stand out. And with Karak Stone, these skulls will stand out very well compared to his flesh. So we're going to start off with a basic layer of Karak Stone all over. Once that is done, we're going to apply wash all over them of Skeleton Horde Contrast paint. And then back to Karak Stone and a fine brush, we will apply this to like 80 to 90% of the skull, mostly around the eyes, the nose, or where that's supposed to be, and parts of the forehead. I'm not too happy with how they turned out a little bit. They look a little too white, so I'm going to apply another layer of skeleton horde contrast on them. And then I'm going to try to do another very fine highlight of Karak stone on the skulls. And then with XV88 and Agrax Earthshade, we're going to paint the strings, ropes that are around his left arm, as like a tourniquet or something. And so we'll start off with a base layer of XV88. And to make it dry faster, you can always use a hairdryer. And then once that is dry, we are then going to then take Agrax Earthshade and just fill it in. We're not going to put that much effort on it, it's just a simple done deal. And now with Doombull Brown and Nuln Oil, we're going to paint the leather belt and the harness belt around his leg that is used to hold his stomach from falling out. I'm going to start off with Doombull Brown as just a base coat layer. It's okay if you touch the teeth on his stomach, we'll paint those afterward. And then we use a simple layer of Nuln Oil all over the leather to add depth, shadow, recesses. If you don't want it to pull too much, we just want to apply a simple layer. We want to cover it in it, we don't want it to pull really. And then going back to Doombull Brown, we're going to highlight the edges of the leather and the raised areas of the leather. And then with Xandri Dust, Mournfan Brown, and Rhinox Hide, we are going to paint all the horns, which I should have done first and then taped them up, because it would have been much easier. But for now we're going to start off with Xandri Dust, and we're going to apply a base layer on all over the horns, or more specifically 1/3 to half of each of the horns, because the further towards the tip of the horns, they get darker with the other colors. So we want to get the base foundation of each of the horns a good coating of Xandri Dust. And now with some poor taping attempts and Mournfan Brown, I start to spray paint the horns. I'm going to do like 2/3 of the horn. The first third of the horn is Xandri Dust. Everything after that is going to be Mournfan Brown. You got to mix it right to make it flow right. So I'm going to mix this right here. And eventually I'm going to tape more sections of it, because some horns I can maneuver around and not hit the body, but there's some horns that I just have to tape the place, and I should have done this first. It'd be easier to have taped these than done the skin, but whatever. And then with Rhinox Hide we will spray paint the tips. And by the tips, I mean the last third of each of the horns, or as best you can, because some of these horns are very small, and it'd be hard to do that. And after removing all the tape, it looks pretty good. So now with Rhinox Hide, I'm going to go in and there's a bunch of carvings or holes in his horns and stuff, and I want to paint the edges of these holes, Rhinox Hide. Now this is actually a bad idea for right now. I should have done this towards the very end of the painting of this model, because I have to paint the insides and then it gets everywhere and I basically have to redo this step. So this step should have been done later. Alright, and now with Pallid Witchflesh, Lamian Medium, Contrast Magos Purple, Calidor Sky, and Rhinox Hide, we're going to paint the many eyeballs that are on this. And the reason why I know they're eyeballs is because the box art told me so. So we're going to start off with Pallid Witchflesh, and we're going to use this as our base layer for each of the eyes. And with Ghurk's actual eye, I used Warpstone Glow to trim up the edges around the eye to make sure it's sharp and the white just didn't blur over everything. So once that's done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take pure Lamian medium and I'm going to coat the eyeball in it. I have a little bit of Lamian medium and Magos purple right next to each other on my palette. And so I coat the eye in Lamian medium, and then I take another brush or the same brush and I just do tap 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 on certain areas on the eyeball so the Magos purple can flood in. And this effect kind of looks like the veins of your eyes, or like bloodshot. This kind of makes a sort of veiny, foggy appearance to your eyes, or to their eyes. So you can use any color. You could use yellow, you could use red, or a wash or contrast or something like that to create this effect. It's more apparent on the big eyes, not so much on the small eyes, but this is basically to make it look like bloodshot or sickened eyes. And then with Calidor Sky, I chose blue because I guess I wanted blue eyes. I was copying the box for it for inspiration, and so I just take a brush and I just make a little circle on each of the eyes based on the size of the eyeball. Now you can use any color you like. You could use green, brown, whichever, but for this I'm basically just painting blue eyes on it. You can use whatever color you like, or you can use different colors, but I just went with blue for all of them. Then with Rhinox hide and a very fine brush, I then make a very small brown circle in the center of each of the eyeballs for the pupil. And now with Pallid Witch Flesh, Bestigor Flesh, and Druchii Violet, which is a very dark purple, a strong purple, we're going to paint the inside of, his horns and such and such. And so we're going to start off with a base layer of Pallid Witch Flesh underneath at the bottom to, as a backdrop for the purple and the Bestigor. And then with Bestigor Flesh, we're going to apply it to all the boils that are inside the horns. Simple enough. And then with Druchii Violet, with Druchii Violet, we're going to apply it into all the crevices and to cover the Bestigor Flesh and the Pallid Witch Flesh. Now, it's strong but not strong enough for our liking, so we're going to end up applying 2 coats of this into all the cracks. Now, we are going to have to go back with Rhinox hide and fix all the edges of the inside of these horns, since we have painted over them. And now with Steel Legion Drab, Agrax Earthshade, and Baneblade Brown, we will now begin to paint the skulls that are inside the horns. Now, I can't use the Xandri dust because the skulls will look just like the area around them, the horns, so that's not going to work. So we're going to start off with Steel Legion Drab as a base color for all the skulls. And once that's done, we're going to take Agrax Earthshade and we're just going to coat them in it. And then we're going to go back with Steel Legion Drab again and just highlight everything, pretty much 90-95% of the entire skull. And then we will do a final highlight with Baneblade Brown on all the highlights, edges, around the eyes, nose, mouth. We're basically painting 70-80% of each of the skulls this color. Now, I forgot about all these teeth on his right arm, so with with Steel Legion Drab, we go and we do this as a base layer on every single one of these teeth. He has, I guess 3 or 4 rows of these teeth, and you have to paint the inside and the outside. Once that's done, we will take the Baneblade Brown and highlight them, basically painting 70-80% of each of the teeth. The tip of the tooth and most of the body will have this. And now with Rhinox hide and Xerxes purple, and sort of a 1-to-1-ish mix, we're going to apply this. Actually, no, I'm going to say 1 part Rhinox hide and 2 parts Xerxes purple. We're going to paint his toenails, hooves, whatever. On the box, it's a dark, somewhat purplish color, so we're going to do that here. I don't think it's dark enough, so I then go back with Druchii Violet, the shade, and then I coat the entire toenails with it. And now with pallid witch flesh and skeleton horde contrast, we are going to paint the worms. There's a lot of worms or maggots that spread out all throughout his body. They're very small, so you can actually miss them, but they're on his legs, his back, at the top, all around. So we start off with a base layer of pallid witch flesh all over them. And once that is complete, we then take skeleton horde contrast and we just apply a simple layer of that on top of them. Working on some finishing touches, I decided to go back with Agrax Earthshade again and spray his feet and make his feet even darker. Again, the bottom of his feet more specifically, and his cankles. And then with Mournfan Brown, Agrax Earthshade, and Steel Legion Drab, we are going to paint the fur that's on top. And we're going to start off with a base layer of Mournfan Brown all over the fur. And once that's done, we're going to take Agrax Earthshade and we're going to apply it all throughout the model, or the fur. And then we're going to overbrush, not dry brush, overbrush Mournfan Brown all over the fur again. Now that the dark recesses of the fur have been made apparent, we're going to overbrush over the tips of the fur with this. We want to overbrush all over the entirety of the fur. And then with Steel Legion Drab, I then overbrush onto the center of each of the pieces of fur, the center line, so that the edges will still be Mournfang. However, looking back, I probably should have used Baneblade Brown, a lighter color, because overbrushing on this, it didn't appear so much, so you can tell there's a slight difference, but it's not obvious of a difference. Then with AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish, we're going to apply this all over the body. At this point, it's pretty much all done except for the metallics. So we're going to apply this all over the body. Yeah, and it's going to make the skin look dead. And then with Lead Belcha, Skeleton Horde Contrast, Nuln Oil, and Nihakala Oxide, we're going to paint all the metal pieces. First, we're going to start off by painting every single piece of metal Lead Belcha. The chain swinging in front, a lot of his horns have what looks like grips on them, as well as spikes or nails. He has nails coming out of the tip of his tentacle. And now we're going to apply Skeleton Horde Contrast all over the, well, most of the metal pieces. How to describe it? I guess use your own judgment on this, but for the swinging ball, yes. For the briar, the symbol, and the blade thing sticking out of them on top, we're not going to. I mean, we are going to. For all the pieces of metal that are stuck onto his horns, we're not going. And then with Nuln Oil, we're going to apply this to all the bracers or pieces of metal that are on his horns and such and such. Now with Lead Belcher, we're going to overbrush onto the metal very lightly. This actually affects very well with the briar and the symbol up top. We don't want to overdo it. We want a lot of the yellow to appear. We just want little bits of the pieces to be showing Lead Belcher. I don't know how to describe it. We don't want to cover too much. And then with the oxide color, we're going to apply this very, very sparingly, like taps, on a few places on the briar and the symbol. And then with a micro pen, a 0.25mm one, we're going to paint the center of his eye. Since all the other eyes have their eyes and stuff, it actually makes him look worse in comparison, so I have to up the detail on his eye. So I do little tap 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 taps until I have it. And then with the base completed, like I paint my Nurgle bases, which you'll find in some of my videos, especially my Plague Bear one on how to do this, I then take a bunch of super glue and apply it to every single recess made by his feet and such. And then I apply it on, or then I glue him on, press him on. And then with Liquitex Gloss Varnish, we're going to apply this to every open sore, the intestines, every pustule, blob, wherever these things are. Yes, and every single eyeball. And the lamprey mouth and the tongue that comes out of his right arm, as well as in the insides of his horns, and such and such. And with Nurgle's Rot and Blood for the Blood God, we're going to apply this everywhere where we think we need to. Now, this is actually a good time to, if there's any mistakes or stuff, you can use this to cover it up. And so we're going to use Nurgle's Rot first. We're going to put a little bit in the mouth that's on his gut, and as well as around his intestines. And I couldn't really think of anywhere else to put the Nurgle's Rot. And then with Blood for the Blood God, I'm going to fill the edges of every single one of his open sores that have fat deposits. I'm going to sprinkle it here and there where I think there should be some blood. Use it to cover up some mistakes here and there, such and such. Go wild, have fun with it. Less is more, but I also want it in his main mouth, like he's coughing up blood and stuff, because these guys are ultimately incredibly sick, so why not? And then with Bestigor Flesh, Evil Sun Scarlet, and Corn Red, we're going to paint the fire on the briar that's up top. Now we're going to start off with Bestigor Flesh and cover the whole thing with it. We want to go from light to dark. And once that's done, we're going to take Evil Sun Scarlet and we're going to overbrush, not dry brush, but overbrush on all over the fire, and we will still easily see the Bestigor Flesh underneath, but like 50 to 60% of the fire should be covered in the Evil Sun Scarlet. And then with Corn Red, we will overbrush around 30 to 40% of the fire with this, and more specifically the upper raised areas, the upper half, 30 to 40% or so. Now for the final assembly with super glue. We're going to apply it and glue, I don't remember the wizard's name. He's the least important one. Well, debatable. We're going to glue the wizard in, making him solid, and then we're just going to apply the scythe guy up top. And once that's done, well, we're done. We're finished. Finally. And now for my final thoughts. This project took a while, but it looks good. Well, mostly. So, Ghurk on himself, this project was himself was a bit more difficult because of the huge size of his model. It produced some issues on, well, just organizing for painting. I like to paint everything in a line or in a row, and like I had to keep going back with the same paints. Like those boils, without looking back, I should have painted the horns towards the end, or at the very beginning, sorry, then taped them up. It would have been much easier, been faster. The boils everywhere, he has boils on his feet, he has boils just pretty much on his horns as well, so I should have done those towards the very end. So I had a lot of trouble with like organizing this, like to make the painting go faster. Now, overall, the model itself, I followed the box art. Now here's a point about the box. When you're not playing Space Marines, everyone can paint Space Marines a million different ways, and people can paint the models however they like. But initially I would say you want to look at the box art because it gives you a good image of like the high level painting, and if you study it close enough, you'll notice with Games Workshop, every spot or area has around like maybe like 3 or 4 colors. Like take a look at like any of the Space Marine boxes, just take a look at a shoulder pad or a shin guard. If you look carefully, there's around 3 to 4 different colors there. Even if it's just a basic yellow or basic ultramarines like blue color scheme, there's like 4 paints there. So using the box really does help you give like a good image, because you may, one of the most important things about painting is having an image of what the model will look like. And so the box will help give you an image of every single detail, because you may not have a full vision of every single part of it. I didn't. That's how I found out about the eyes and a few other things. So as far as Ghurk himself, I'm feeling, some places I feel like I phoned it in, some things didn't work out as well, some things I think I overdid it on some colors. I'm going to have to say I give him a 7 out of 10 himself. However, I was right about his brothers. Them being white-skinned or having this other stuff allows them to be clearly visible. The scythe guy is able to stand out because of his silhouette, but his brother, the wizard, slightly blends in a little. That's sad. But overall, the kit combined I'm going to say is an 8 out of 10 overall. Together, homogeneously, it looks good. Ghurk himself, 7 out of 10. Now, I didn't put the banner on the back because I didn't want to. I got lazy towards the end, and also there's a lot of detail underneath it with all those boils and stuff, and I just didn't want to like cover up all that work. So I'm partially lazy, and I had a justification. Now, moving forward, there is one note I would like to point out to everyone. Everyone who has seen my videos and watched my stuff have seen me paint the Indomitus box set. Well, okay, this video came out a little late, but I put up all the Indomitus items that I painted up on eBay, and I think around 4 or 5 of them have already sold. Yeah, this video took a while to get out, but a lot of the rest is still there. All the Necrons are still there. Who would have thought? But if anyone wants to essentially support me or the channel, just go to eBay, look up Black Templar or Necrons and stuff, and you'll probably find my stuff there. And all the sales and stuff will essentially go to buying a 3D printer for some cool stuff, and for also getting more models. I'm torn between Lumineth Realm Lords and some of the new Space Marine releases. Not the buggy or that stupid turret. The one that the Mechanicus guy is sitting in. Definitely not those. So, well, that's it for this. I'm going to be moving on to... I guess I have Puskyle Blight Lords. I have a couple things. I'm not fully sure. But, alright, so like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share it, comment if you have anything to nitpick or say. Good luck, have fun, see you later. Bye.